Hey guys, HK7335 here, bringing you another video. This time it's the assembly for the JFNX LL-99C blaster. If you're watching this video, it means you purchased my STL file for this particular model, and I'm going to show you how to put it together. It's pretty easy. So there's basically 12 pieces total, and what you're going to get is a receiver, barrel shroud, trigger guard, left scale, right scale, trigger well cover, which we're going to hide right now, and then trigger box. And we'll talk about the trigger and the trigger box first. So let's go ahead and isolate those. So basically what you have here is a very simple setup where the trigger pivots on a screw that is installed into the trigger box. The hole is designed for an M3 machine screw, and you can screw those directly into plastic and they will hold quite well. So you don't need a threaded insert or anything. This isn't going to be receiving any kind of pulling force. It's simply acting as a pivot for the trigger. So once that's in, then you can maneuver the spring, which sits over these two nubs, and I will provide the information for the type of spring that works the best in this situation. And you'll have the option to either order the spring off of Amazon. You can go and visit my Amazon store. You can find that on my link tree, or you can go to your local hardware store. If it's a good one, they should have drawers and drawers full of all kinds of interesting things, including springs, different kinds of springs, expansion springs, compression springs, leaf springs, etc., etc. So we're going to be using what's called a compression spring, which I'm sure you're all familiar with if you've ever taken a ballpoint pen apart. The little spring that's in the front, that's called a compression spring, and it's because it compresses. And that's how this works. You just squeeze the trigger, it compresses the spring, and then the spring force will return it back to its correct position. So the first thing you want to do is assemble this. Basically, it's going to be either a screw or a dowel pin of some kind, and the spring. Once you've got that, then you have the option of gluing the trigger cover onto the trigger box and then installing that whole assembly up into the receiver. You could definitely do it that way. There's nothing wrong with doing it that way. That's certainly an option. What you do want to do is you want to install it and the trigger box into the receiver before you put the trigger guard on. You won't be able to do the trigger guard until after you put the barrel on, so we'll get to that. Alright, so you've gone ahead and installed the trigger assembly into the receiver, which is this part right here. Next, on the receiver, you're going to want to install let's see if we can just isolate some things here. You want to install the rear sight, which just drops into this little seat right here. You can see it's kind of cut out to fit that. Okay, so once you've installed the rear sight, you're going to want to install the hammer. The hammer is an incredibly simple piece. It's just a hunk of plastic, and it fits into this little slot here, and just glue that in, just like that. So just glue that in. Most of the things on here are designed to be glued. I really wanted to keep it as simple as possible in terms of assembly. I'm going to hide this for the moment, because the next thing you're going to want to do, I'm going to move this up out of the way, is glue on the barrel. And the barrel is designed to socket into this part here, and it holds really well as long as you get glue onto this surface here and into this this socket. It should hold really well. However, if you want to reinforce it with a metal dowel, you certainly could do that. It's just you're going to need to be very precise with your drilling so that you get everything to line up correctly and be straight. But I have put these together with this system and have had no issues with the barrel breaking off or deforming at the joint in any way. So I would just glue that on, and once you've done that, then you can drop the barrel shroud down over the top of it. This actually does not need to be glued. However, you certainly can do that. It is flexible enough to where it's going to drop down and snap right on top of the barrel. Okay, And again, you can glue it. I mean, if you're going to want to finish this hole out and not have any kind of a gap here at all, then you're going to definitely want to glue it. But it doesn't have to be. That's all I'm saying. So the next thing, now that you've got these major components installed, the next thing you're going to want to do is install the trigger guard. The trigger guard is one piece, and it fits right in this slot under the barrel and in the receiver, and I would just glue that in. Just make sure it's straight, make sure it's not sitting crooked. You may want to clamp it or tape it while it's drying. Super glue should work fine. Epoxy is better, but just be sure everything is straight, because once it dries, it's going to be very hard to take it apart without damaging it. And lastly, once you have your trigger housing on, then of course you're going to put your scales on. I would just glue those in. Yeah, there is a cavity here. It's not a huge amount of space, but if for some reason you wanted to hollow this whole thing out and run some electronics, this would be a good place to put batteries. So at that point, I mean, if you're that clever and crafty, you're going to be able to figure out a way to have one of these scales act as a lid that is removable, probably with a screw, but that's at your discretion. Otherwise, if you want to keep it simple, just glue them in. They go right into this little cavity here, and they should seat in place, pretty much just like that. So you'll have a little bit of the edge sticking out. This probably does go in just a little bit more. It'd be about like that. So that's what you're gonna see. All right. So that is the assembly for the JFNX LL-99C, and I just wanted to say au revoir, which means thanks a million for buying my model, and happy building. Until next time, this is HK7335, and I will see you in the next video.